Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of my series on Gothic and Romantic literature on this channel. And today we are talking about The Black Cat, a story written by Edgar Allan Poe and published in 1843. If you haven't read the story yet, you should do this before listening to the video, because I cannot properly talk about my analysis of the story without spoiling you in a way. So please go and read that story first if you haven't yet. It's worth it. That's why I'm talking about it today. So the story is about a man who is a drunkard. He drinks a lot of alcohol, and whenever he's drinking he cannot hold himself together properly, so he grows angry and he does things that he wouldn't normally do. At least he says so. So he's, for example, he's having a cat that he loves a lot. It's a black cat and it's called Pluto, and he's very, like, his dearest animal. He also has other animals, but the cat is the dearest one. And one day he takes out the eye socket of the cat in his fury and anger and like this rush of alcoholism. And I think even just the day after, he kills the cat and hangs it on a tree, and then there's a big fire. And when he looks back at the house, he sees that there is like the figure of the dead cat pressed into the wall. So it's really a supernatural element in a way, and he grows even more angry and full of hatred. And after a while he meets another black cat that's also beautiful and even resembles Pluto a lot. So he takes the cat into the house, and the cat doesn't go away from him anymore. So at first he's like also feeling very close to the cat, and he doesn't want to let it go, but then the cat is too close to him, and he loathes it really. He feels hatred and he just wants to get rid of it and decides he wants to kill it. And then his wife, who's also very fond of animals, she protects the cat, and so he kills his wife instead of the cat eventually. And then he only buries the body of his wife, and finally he is arrested for the murder. So I just want to go through the story and read some of the quotes to you, because I think the most interesting part of the whole story actually is just the change in the personality of the narrator and the way he tries to rationalize all of his behavior and says, it's not my own fault, it's not me who's doing all these things, it's the reason is just because, like, a sense of perverseness and such things. So I will just go through some of the quotes that were most striking to me, because I think I can just let them speak for themselves and just comment a little on them so you can see what's going on. So, for example, he opens the story in this, like, it's the personal perspective on him. For the most wild yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. So he says he just wants to place before the world a series of mere household events. So that's interesting already, because I think all of the events that I just told you about, like killing the cat and killing his wife whilst trying to kill the other cat, these are not mere household events. And also taking the eye socket out of your cat, it's one of the most horrible things I can imagine a person doing at home to another living being. So he already here, he wants to unburden his soul. He wants to lay it all on the ground for the reader to judge for themselves, maybe. And he says he is not mad, so everything he tells about is rational and true, of course. So Then he talks about his infancy, which is also really interesting, especially from a psychological perspective, because he says, "From my infancy I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions." So on the one hand, he says like he was so known for his docility and humanity, but you could also interpret this in a way that he was maybe suppressing his feelings. You don't really know why he was this way. And docility, I think, can also be connected with submissiveness, for example, which can be a good thing, but it can also lead to suppressing your own feelings maybe and your own behavior that you would normally do. So he says he was especially fond of animals, and he was having animals all the time, and also with his wife together they had animals. And for example, they had a dog, rabbits, a goldfish, birds, a small monkey, and a cat. And the cat was the dearest to him. And then he also says that his wife, she shared all this passion for the animals, and she also was very fond of them, so they had this in common, which is a very good thing, I think, because this way the animals were probably treated very nicely. But she also was a little superstitious, he says, so she was sometimes talking with a notion that regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. So I think already here you can see that the black cat is in this story kind of a symbol for all the bad things within the narrator's soul. So he, from time to time, he grows more loathing and full of hatred of the cat, and I think that's because he's imposing all these bad parts of himself onto the cat. So all the parts that he cannot really deal with and he doesn't really know what to think about, he imposes them onto the cat. So that's why he feels so much hatred for the cat and why he actually acts the way he acts, I think. He says that he has been treating the other animals also not so well, but Pluto he has always treated well. But then the more alcohol he consumed and the more he was in this rush, he couldn't act rationally anymore. So I will just read the part where he takes the eye socket. It's really horrible. "I seized him, when in his fright at my violence he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fibre of my frame." And it's interesting that he says that he was possessed by a demon instantly, so he will already have this motive as well, that he says it's something demonic that came upon him and it was never from within him. And that's also a way I think he tries to defend himself in front of himself and others as well. So he wants to rationalize all of his behavior in this way. And then he says this thing about perverseness. He says that there's the spirit of perverseness of which philosophy takes no account, but which is part of the human soul. He says, "I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man." And he says that whenever he describes an action, one of these horrible actions, like taking the lives of the cat or his wife, he describes it in a way that he's not actually acting like himself, but acting with this sense of perverseness. And so we have this spirit of perverseness that he says he is always victim of somehow. And this spirit is like acting for him in a way. That's the way he describes everything. And then so he kills the cat, and then he sees the figure of the dead cat on the wall, and he also tries to rationalize this by saying that someone must have taken the cat which he hung on a tree outside in the garden and thrown it back into the house, so that there was this figure. And then after some time he meets like this other cat, and it looks almost the same as Pluto, and he is really fond of it. But then when he discovers that it's also having an eye socket missing, he like loathes it as well. And all the while his wife grows very, very fond of the other cat and wants to protect it of the violent and aggressive behavior of her husband. And then there's the scene where he actually wants to kill the cat, but then as the wife tries to protect the cat, he kills the wife instead. And he says, this blow, like the blow he tries to strike at the cat, was arrested by the hand of my wife, goaded by the interference into rage more than demoniacal. I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. And I think it's really horrible the way, like, so like emotionless the way he tells that. And after that he only cares about how to hide the body, and then he actually covers it up with some bricks from a chimney he happens to find in the cellar. And then the police come around and they're checking everything, and he's really happy that nothing really happens. And he also thinks that the cat must have like left the premises, and he's unburned again, and he can just live freely and without any fear or anger. But then when the police come around for one time, he like knocks on the brick walls, and then he hears like a sound. And then I want to read you again. I was answered by a voice from within the tomb where he covered his wife, by a cry, at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony, and of the demons that exalt the damnation. And also here you have this demonic element which comes upon him and like makes him do all these things. And we are almost at the end of the story, so he freaks out and he is really not himself anymore. And then this is the part where I think, okay, it's really his like fury and madness speaking here. It's the very last few sentences, which say, the corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. And I think that's a really, really strong ending for that story, because there's like not a single word that's too much, I think that's really a great thing in Poe's writing. He writes so concisely and so on the spot that you really feel that's the way he should do it. I really think the story is very dense with all these topics, and especially like this madness, the losing of his rationality, and the way he tries to rationalize his behavior through the demonic and the perverseness, which he says is part of the human soul, is really interesting. And I think you could think about it for hours, because of course there's parts in the like in humans, I think, parts of us that are like bad and make us do things that we wouldn't do otherwise, but it's so complex, and it's really a vast field of elements that are coming together in this story. But I think if you read it from this perspective, that you try to follow the way that the narrator tries to rationalize his behavior throughout this whole story, and you see that the amount of times when he talks about these demonic things and the black cat, and it's growing like, yeah, worse and worse, and he's also describing it as loathsome and ugly and I don't know what else. It's growing so like the suspense, it rises and it accumulates in the end in this murder of his wife, and himself obviously going mad in a way, and people going mad, as you might see in the videos, is very typical. It's a great story. I think it's also interesting to read it in comparison with The Telltale Heart, which is also a story by Poe, in which a man kills an old man, and he doesn't really have a reason for that, but then he also tries to justify it in front of himself all the time. And it would be too much to talk about that in detail on this video, but if you're interested in the story, I would really recommend reading that as well. So I hope you enjoyed what I read to you and what I told you about the story. I think you could think for hours on end about the symbol of a black cat, like also the witch in disguise, what does that mean and how is that connected to the story. But that was like not the point of view that I took when I tried to read the story and tried to make sense of it in myself. So I'll see you in my next video, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye.